If there is one leader Boris Johnson looks up to, it is Winston Churchill. The UK Prime Minister often sees himself as Churchill's heir. But now it looks like Johnson is having his own Churchill moment. Having written a book about Churchill, the UK Prime Minister knows one thing: success in war does not guarantee leadership. Churchill was known for his leadership against the Nazis in World War II, but even that could not stop him from losing the election in 1945. Will it be the same with Boris Johnson? In January, Johnson's career as Prime Minister was in the pits. The Partygate scandal nearly ended his premiership. But soon after, war broke out in Ukraine. Britain needed stable leadership amid the war in Europe, and Boris Johnson miraculously managed to save his career. The UK Prime Minister is often known as the master of political survival. He survived scandals that would have sunk his rivals. But this time, the Prime Minister is facing a moment of truth. Over what? The Pincher scandal. Chris Pincher was the Tory deputy whip until last week. He has since resigned after being accused of sexual misconduct. Downing Street at first said Johnson was not aware of these allegations. But later, Number 10 issued a clarification. It said that the Prime Minister had initially forgotten that he was in fact informed about this in 2019. Since then, it has been resignation after resignation. The resignation of both the Chancellor Rishi Sunak and the Health Secretary Sajid Javid rocked the party. Ever since, several other ministers have resigned. Others have appealed his top team of cabinet ministers to move against him. But even with the horde of resignations, Boris is still holding on. He says he will not resign. So currently, there are two scenarios. One would be a cabinet revolt. Boris's top team will have to tell the Prime Minister his time is up. This is how Margaret Thatcher was forced out in 1990. The second would be a revolt of the parliamentary party. The same thing that happened to Theresa May. Johnson narrowly survived a confidence vote last month, giving him 12 months of immunity from another one. But some lawmakers have been trying to change the party rules. They want to shorten that immunity period. And if that happens, a second no-confidence vote can be triggered. 15% of Conservative MPs have to submit a letter. The letters are secretly sent to Sir Graham Brady. The veteran Tory MP leads the 1922 committee, 1922 committee. Only Brady will know how many letters he receives. In the last vote, 148 Tory MPs voted against him and 211 voted in favour. So there is little doubt that the threshold can be reached a second time. If Boris Johnson survives the vote, he will remain as Prime Minister. But if he loses, a Tory leadership contest is triggered. He is not allowed to stand for re-election as the leader. But even if Boris Johnson does not survive the scandal, the problem with the Conservatives is the lack of a potential successor. There are several options, but none of them measure up. The first one is Rishi Sunak, UK's former Chancellor of the Exchequer. He has often been seen as the heir in waiting. But Sunak's popularity has plunged after a series of controversies. He is weighed down by policy blunders and his own scandals, and was also fined for attending Johnson's birthday party. The second is Liz Truss. The Foreign Secretary is popular among the Tories, but she lacks voter appeal. Some Conservatives even doubt the leader's ability to keep them in Parliament. Another option is Jeremy Hunt. The former Foreign Secretary finished second to Johnson in the 2019 leadership contest. The other options including the likes of Ben Wallace, Sajid Javid, Nadeem Zahawi, but they are not mainstream leaders or a credible alternative. And this makes replacing Boris Johnson even more difficult. With Europe at war, most Conservatives do not trust his potential rivals and don't want a vacuum in the country's leadership amid the crisis. They would rather deal with a scandal than an unreliable alternative. For now, timing is everything. Boris Johnson may be down with scandals, but he's not yet out. Fellow at the Foreign Policy Institute, Maximilian, is with us on the broadcast this minute for more perspectives. Thanks very much for being here with us. What is your assessment of the position that Boris Johnson is taking at the moment? Series of resignations, he remains defiant, and he is clinging on to his post.
Yes, thank you for having me. Boris Johnson's communications team is trying to make it pretty clear that they think he still has the votes to support him within the Conservative Party. Now, you gave a very good analysis and overview earlier, and the 1922 committee is actually meeting tonight to elect new leadership, where they will look at those rules. So it is quite possible that if Boris Johnson doesn't have the majority, they will use their votes on that 1922 committee to enable a leadership vote, potentially even in the coming days. Boris Johnson had about 70 majority in the last leadership election last month within the Conservative Party. And so far, about 20 ministers and junior ministers from his government have resigned. So it's looking very unlikely that he actually does still have that majority. That being said, I very much doubt that Boris Johnson has any indication of resigning. We just saw him speaking before the liaison committee, where he was given an opportunity to do so again and said he would not be. So I think the Conservative Party will have to drag him out screaming.
What is your assessment of what lies ahead now? What's next for the UK, and what do you think Boris Johnson's strategy would be at this point?
Well, either Boris Johnson somehow manages to survive now and limps on until the next scandal, or there is a leadership election and the Conservatives look to choose from one of those potential candidates you mentioned earlier, or even a backbencher who could make a run, given that Boris Johnson is largely seen to have chosen a cabinet of people so incompetent that he looks good in comparison. So many in his cabinet, that will actually be a negative for them. What the Conservative Party really needs to choose, though, is who is best suited to lead them into the next general election expected in 2024, but there have been rumors it'll be moved up until 2023. And there's a lot more uncertainty. It sort of remains to be seen who can repeat Boris Johnson's election magic or find a new way. And that is, of course, Boris Johnson's argument and that of his supporters for why he should stay on.
What about the revolt from his own and from within his own party? He does have a lot of pacifying to do. How do you think he's going to manage going about doing that?
Well, I think at this point, that's almost impossible. It's such an open revolt from two senior ministers, followed by a barrage of resignations from across the government, from the lowest parliamentary private secretary to other ministers, is something that no British prime minister in modern history has really survived, at least for long. So maybe he has a very thin majority that survives him tonight on the 1922 committee, but then things just get more tense and we'll be back discussing this again in a few months, weeks, maybe even days.
Maximilian, we're leaving it there for the moment. Thanks very much for joining us with those perspectives.
Thank you for having me.
WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.